Alright, so in this video we're going to look at graphing some parabolas in standard form. And so our first equation here, we have y equals x squared plus x minus 5. And there's a few ways that we can figure this out. We can make a table of functions or a table of values. So we have x and we pick whatever x values we want. Usually 0 and -1 and 1 are pretty easy. And then we would just plug those x values in and find the y values for those. You can also use the quadratic equation sometimes. And if you don't know, or if you need a refresher, the quadratic equation isn't going to work every time. If you get a negative value in this square root box, then it's not going to work. And that just means you're not going to have any x-intercepts. That means the parabola is going to be something like that, and you're not going to find x-intercepts over here. But essentially, if you wanted to use the quadratic equation here, then this b value equals the coefficient of the single variable, so x, and a equals the coefficient for the x squared value, and c equals the coefficient of this guy right here. So in this case, c would be -5, b would be +1, and a would also be +1. So you could try plugging those in there. Another thing you can do is you can try to factor out. If you see something that's easily factorable, then you can do that. And I'm not sure that that's the case this time, but I'll show you an example. So let's say that you could factor some equation, and you would have, let's say, x minus 2 and x plus 3. Then what you could do is you could use this to solve for the x-intercepts. That means, what does x equal when y equals 0? So this would be the same equation here. Would set the y to 0, and we would solve. And we can do that by realizing that we're going to have two values that we come up with. So if either one of these terms, so if x minus 2 equals 0, then that would mean y would equal 0. Or if x plus 3 equals 0, then y would equal 0. Because if this part equals 0, then 0 times any number would be 0, and vice versa. So what we could do is we could set both of these terms equal to 0 and solve for x. So that would mean x equals 2 would be a x-intercept. So it would mean that when y equals 0, x would equal 2. And then we can put x plus 3 equals 0. And we would get x equals -3. So that would mean that on a graph over here, that would mean that when x is 2, y would be 0. And then if x equals 3, y would also be 0. And then you'd have some parabola that looks like this. Alright, so let's go back to the first part, and we'll just set up a table of functions here. So let's say, let's say x equals 0. So we'd have 0 squared is 0, plus 0 is 0, minus 5. So we would have minus 5 over here. And then -1, so when x equals -1, would have -1 squared, which is +1. And then plus -1, so that's -1. And then minus 5. So we'd have 1 minus 1 is 0, minus 5 is -5. And then for the 1 value, you would have 1 squared is 1, plus 1 is right here, and then minus 5. So we'd have 1 plus 1 is 2, minus 5 is negative 4. Did I do it right? Oh, 1 plus 1 is 2, minus 5 is negative 3. Alright, so let's put those on the graph over here. So 0, both 0 and negative 1 will equal negative 5. So 0, negative 5, and then, what was the other one? Negative 1 is also negative 5. So x equals negative 1, y equals negative 5. And so positive 1 will equal negative 3. Alright, and so we have our graph right here. We found a few points, and now we can just graph that. Alright, for our next one, we have x squared minus 4x minus 3. So let's see if anything will factor out of here. If we have a negative 3 and negative 1, that wouldn't quite work, because that would be positive 3 and negative 4. I'm not seeing anything, so it looks like we could either do the quadratic or the table. And for the sake of time, let's just do the table. Alright, so let's go back over here. Alright. So we have our function x squared minus 4x minus 3. Alright, so negative 1 squared is 1. And then minus 4 times x. So 4 times negative 1 is 4. Negative 4 times negative 1 is 4. And then minus 3. Alright, so 1 plus 4 is 5, minus 3 is 2. Alright, so 0 squared is 0 minus, or negative 4 times 0 is 0 minus 3. So that would be negative 3. And then 1 squared is 1. And then negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 minus 3. So this would be negative 3 minus 3, negative 6. Alright, so when x is negative 1, y is 2. X negative 1, y is 2. Alright, so when x is 0, y is negative 3. And when x is 1, y is negative 6. Okay. Alright, so last one is x squared minus 3x minus 1. Alright, so I don't see anything that'll factor out of there, so let's do our tables again. Alright, so for our last problem here, I got our table set up. And so now let's start plugging in values. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And then negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. Then minus 1. So 1 plus 3 is 4, minus 1 is 3. Alright, so 0 squared minus 3 times 0 minus 1 is negative 1. And then 1 squared minus 3 times 1, or negative 3 times 1, minus 1 is negative 3, I believe. 1 minus 3 is negative 2, minus 1 is negative 3. Alright, so negative 1 when x equals negative 1, y equals 3. Alright, and when x is 0, y is negative 1. No, I think I did that wrong. Oh, no, I got it right. Okay. X is 0, y is negative 1. Okay. And then when x is 1, y is negative 3. Alright, so let me double check that. Negative 1, 3, 0, negative 1, and 1, negative 3. Okay, so it looks like we should be good. Alright, so hopefully that video helped. If you have any questions, just let me know.